Welcome to this Photoshop CS4 tutorial. Here we're going to be looking at the healing brush tool and its comparison with the clone stamp tool. One of the things we're going to try to achieve here is to clone out or heal out the freckles that she's got. If I hold down the spacebar, same on both Mac and Windows, is that I can just move the image around, and if we look, we've got some good skin here on her arms and the same over here, but what I want to do is I want to remove the freckles around the top of the face and as best as I can around the nose and underneath the eyes. Now, quite a tall order, this one. Most people would probably go for the clone stamp tool. Now, the clone stamp tool I think of as a copy and paste tool. So how you use this tool is that you hold down the Alt key on both Mac and Windows, and you have to set the point of cloning, i.e. where you want to take, in this case, the skin from. So I see that the best part of the skin that we've got to copy from is down here on her forearm. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key and I'm going to click there, and that's now set my point of cloning. Before I use the tool, as is good practice, is I'm checking that it's going to be in the normal mode, and I'm going to be painting with full opacity, so 100% of the strength of this part of her skin over her face here. On your keyboard, the two keys to the right of the P, the braces or brackets keys, I'm going to hit the right brace just to take up my brush size a little to make it bigger. Left brace obviously makes it smaller. Good little shortcut, that one. The disadvantage of the cloning tool is watch what happens as I click and keep my finger down. If you look in the bottom left hand corner of your screen, you'll see a plus symbol is showing me where I'm cloning from, and you can see on her forehead where I'm cloning that skin to. Now, if I let go there and then move away, as you can see that there's a discrepancy between the light tone of her skin from her forehand to the light tone of the skin on her forehead. And this is the main problem with the cloning tool. The cloning tool clones like for like. I could take down the opacity to blend it in, but the problem is that it's only really ideal when you have two areas of similar colour or tone to be blended into each other. Here the skin on the girl's arm is lighter down there and consequently is then showing up on her forehead. I'm going to click onto my history. I'm a big fan of the history, and the history records every single manoeuvre that you make in Photoshop. And through the preferences under the Photoshop menu and preferences and general, it's different on Windows, it's under the edit menu. You can then set under performance the number of history states. I like to set mine to a lot of history states, about 120. The default value is only 20, so it only remember the last 20 things that you do. The more states you set it to, the more RAM memory it's going to take up though, so you need to have a fairly powerful computer. I'm going to then just click onto that one there, make sure it's selected, and then just hit a little delete bin to delete that, and you can see it's then removed that from that change on her head. I'm just going to close my history. Now I'm going to change to the healing brush tool, and the healing brush tool was introduced in the first CS versions of Photoshop. How this tool works, it's very similar to the clone tool. Again, I'm going to hold down the Alt key on both Mac and Windows, and I'm going to set this part of her forearm as my cloned source point. I'm going to hit the right braces just to take the size of my cloning tool up. Under the brush here is that I have the option of either having a hard brush, or I can take the hardness down to have a more softer diffused edged brush. This is worth experimenting with. I quite often find that a more diffused edged brush works better. What I want to do then is that I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to paint over a little area. So watch what happens. You can again see the plus symbol in the left hand corner, and you can see the lighter colour. But then notice that when I've let go, what Photoshop has done with the healing brush tool, it has automatically blended in that change. So it's taken the skin from here, applied it over the top, but then tonally blended to match the actual light values of the skin underneath. Really very clever. Now I can then just do little marks, and you can see by just doing little slow marks like this is that I can then slowly go round and heal out, I suppose is the phrase, all these little blemishes. When I'm teaching this on courses is I tend to see people want to take shortcuts, and one of the things they do is that they click and keep their finger down and they rub over big areas like this. You can see there it's made a little obvious mistake. So I'm going to, in my history, just go back one step and undo that. My preference in using this tool, and I tend to find what works best, is either just to click to set little spots, what I call spot healing, or alternatively is to then click and just do a little drag like that. Now I can see it actually made an error over there, so again I'm going to go back into my history. You can see all the different steps mounting up, and it was that particular step there. So if I delete that, then I just remove that one step. I'm just going to do a little stroke like this. I do it about an inch long, and I tend to wait and watch and see how well Photoshop has blended it in. Occasionally it does get a little confused and it makes a mistake. So I tend to watch each little blend in turn, so I can just do that part there. Didn't do a particularly good job on that one, so again I'm just going to go back in my history. You can just click back up a state rather than deleting it if you wish. Now I'm going to have a go at the nose, which is much more difficult to deal with. So again I'm just going to make some very tiny little strokes and then watch the effect that Photoshop does to blend it in, and just do each of them nice and slowly. I want to be careful not to change the overall shape of her nose, obviously to keep it looking very realistic at the same time. So I can just start to do those sorts of little bits there like that. Now I haven't got time here to go around and do the whole thing, but you can certainly give it a go, and you can try underneath the eyes and around the cheeks here and above the lips at the same time. I could just do a little bit there and a little bit there. It really is a very clever tool, great for touching up spots and blemishes and all sorts of bits and pieces on photographs. Finally, which I always like to do whenever I'm doing anything in Photoshop, is that Photoshop will always take an opening snapshot of everything. So this is the default state of the image when you open it. If I click this little camera icon here on the history palette, it allows me to create a new snapshot, which is a picture of where I am currently at. And I like to snapshot things regularly, so I can then look back and see whether A was better than B, than C, or it just allows you to go backwards and forwards through multiple changes to images. I'm going to double click the name here so I can rename it, and I'm just going to call it First Go, and then just hit enter. If I click back onto the first snapshot, I can then see the original opening state of the image, and already I can see the amount of work that the healing brush has done. So clicking between them, quite a good amount of change there. If I was doing this on a professional basis, is that I would probably do little areas at a time, again working slowly in small brush strokes, keep snapshotting, and then ultimately you could build up a very good change to the overall image.